Hi, welcome back to a series, Storytelling for Nonprofits. I'm Arturo, a designer and educator at Canva. So far in this series, we've learned about the key building blocks of stories and how to tell stories ethically. Now, it's time to explore the different ways of telling that story. Over the next 2 episodes, we're going to look at how we can use both images and videos to communicate a story effectively. So let's dive in. As we said, stories can be told in many different ways. First up, let's take a look at using still images. Images are an incredibly powerful storytelling format. This photo is a great example of how a whole story can be told with just one image. Here we see Rosa, the lady with the silver hair, embracing a nurse in a care home in Brazil. This photo brings us back to March 2021, at the beginning of the pandemic, when care homes across Brazil closed their doors to visitors because of COVID. It was a time when millions of Brazilians couldn't visit their elderly relatives, and carers were told to limit physical contact with the vulnerable to an absolute minimum. At this care home, they came up with the hug curtain, a simple but ingenious invention that gave people a chance to hug each other once again. This hug you see in the picture was the first hug that Rosa experienced after 5 months of complete isolation. And these pictures are from Rise for Justice, an awareness campaign by One Family People, an NGO in Sierra Leone. One Family People works to change misconceptions and stereotypes about disabilities. Traditionally, in Sierra Leone, people with disabilities are excluded from family portraits. And this campaign flips this narrative and shows a series of real people with disabilities. They get to choose how they're represented. They chose their positions, their clothes, the settings, and the attitude that they wanted to express. These photos are a celebration. They showcase the unique personalities and abilities of the people they represent, and communicate strength as we see them standing on an elevated pedestal. And speaking of great photography, we were able to catch up with Rena Effendi, an award-winning documentary photographer and storyteller. Through her photography, she has documented incredible stories of conflict, social justice, and the environment. And she shared with us her take on how photography can be used to tell incredible stories.
My name is Rena Effendi. I'm a social documentary photographer, and I tell my stories with photographs. I use storytelling as a platform for advocacy around issues that I find very important, be it social justice, environment, or conflict. I believe that a human story, if told beautifully and responsibly, can be a vehicle for social change. It can inspire positive action. Storytelling allows me to connect with people and expand my own horizons. It gives me a glimpse into the worlds and cultures I would otherwise not be exposed to. So I share these stories with others. One of the most important things I learned in photography as a storyteller is to be less judgmental, and I hope that my work can educate and inspire others to be open-minded too. A single photograph is a moment of history frozen in time. It does not only illustrate or document a particular event, it also encapsulates a vast range of feelings and emotions. A series of photographs is a visual narrative which can lay out a story in a captivating sequence. I often think of it as a storyboard for a film. It will have an establishing shot, which will give us a sense of place, a beginning of the story. It will have the main lead, which is a portrait of a character whose actions and emotions we're witnessing. It will have a point of climax and final resolution. A few years ago, I worked on a story about a family, but it was also a story of leadership, tenacity, and kindness in the most unlikely places, and it all revolved around a single man. On assignment for the Wall Street Journal, I followed Patricio Galvez, a Chilean-Swedish musician and poet, a father of 3 and a grandfather of 7 children. I went alongside Patricio on his quest to rescue 7 of his orphan grandchildren from captivity in Syria. In 2014, Patricia's daughter Amanda married a Swedish radical Islamist who became a notorious militant recruiter for ISIS. She and her children followed him into Syria, where they joined the organization. Ultimately, both Amanda and her husband were killed in airstrikes as the coalition forces took over Raqqa in 2019. The children survived the violence and ended up in Al-Hol, a sprawling and hostile refugee camp. For months, Patricia tried to persuade Swedish authorities to help him repatriate the children and bring them back to safety. But they adamantly refused until a media campaign brought the issue to the forefront of public attention. I can now proudly say that putting a human face on this story contributed to what happened in the end. Under mounting public pressure from the media campaign, the Swedish authorities finally caved in and facilitated the release and the expatriation of these children from the Syrian camp. These innocent children, traumatized by war and loss of their parents, are now safe and thriving while being looked after by their loving foster families in Sweden. My tips on how to tell a good story through photography are the following. 1. Research the subject well before embarking on a story. This knowledge will deepen your understanding of local culture and sensibilities. 2. There is no need to rush. Spend time with the person or community whose story you're trying to tell. Stay close, be courteous, and try building rapport. This will help win the trust of the people you're trying to photograph. 3. Keep in mind all the different elements you need in a story. Establishing shots, action, emotion, character portrait, environment, and details. 4. Aim to have different types of shots. There should be close-ups, mid-range shots, and general views. The visual narrative has to be dynamic and not monotonous. If there's any repetition, it must be deliberate. It has to be part of the story. Otherwise, it flattens the story. For me, a great photograph is not only aesthetically pleasing, but also thought-provoking and sometimes even haunting. The more emotion I see in a photograph, the more I can read into it, the more powerful and interesting it becomes. I love photographs that are layered, where I'm gripped by the things happening in the foreground, but I'm also intrigued with the background. These layers are often interconnected.
Patricia's story is a great example of how you can tell a deeply moving story through photos. Having the right images to tell your story is essential. But perhaps you don't have a professional photographer working for you or budget to hire one. At Canva, our aim is to empower you to tell your story no matter your budget. And we also want to empower the photographers whose work you can find on Canva. We had a chat with Candy from a visual content team to tell us more about our content library and how it supports diversity.
Hi, I'm Candy. I'm the lead for Elements in the visual content team at Canva. We created Canva with the mission of empowering the world to design. With a global community spanning more than 190 countries, this means having content that represents the unique and vibrant world around us. Our content library touches all Canva users, and we're striving to build a library that represents and celebrates every single one of them. Building representation and diverse narratives in our free content library is a key area of focus for Canva users. Canva's Fund for Diverse Creatives is key to our responsible production of diverse and inclusive photography, illustration, video, and animation. We can achieve this by working with an ever-growing community of creatives around the world. Each one of us sees the world through a different lens, and that lens is defined by our life experiences, our identities, and our beliefs. It shapes how we see and experience the world. We gravitate towards great stories told by great storytellers. So, more often than not, our worldviews will be shaped in part by the lens of a camera and the storyteller behind it. Not only do we want to capture stories from varied communities, but also the stories of the creatives behind the lens. So, through Canva's Fund for Diverse Creatives, we're commissioning artists to tell their authentic stories. Beyond this standalone project, Canva content has been engaging more than ever with creatives globally to help build our free Elements offering for specific communities. Recently, we've produced high-quality, hyper-localized collections for India, South Korea, Indonesia, Colombia, Turkey, the UAE, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, all produced by local creatives featuring local talent, locations, food, events, styling, cultural trends, and truly local narratives. As the number of global creatives we engage grows, so does the number of perspectives we can showcase in our core content of graphics, photography, video, and animation. This includes continually diversifying our most popular content and resolving content gaps. This season, our Elements team has aligned with our non-profit templates designers on specific campaigns including Ukraine aid, chronic illness, and period poverty. As we grow, it's important that we engage in a two-way conversation with our users. We offer all users the ability to submit in-product feedback when they can't find what they're looking for. We also regularly audit our content for specific search terms, and we've launched a report an image function, allowing users to provide direct feedback on inappropriate content. Addressing inclusion and diversity needs to be a human-centric approach. It's about people, and storytelling is one of the most universal human experiences. It shows us the world through a new lens and allows us to build a shared understanding.
We're always growing our content library, and we'd love to know, what are you looking for? Anything you'd like us to add or consider for the Canva photo library? Let us know in the comments below this video. And to help you put your learning into practice, we've created a workbook to accompany this series. To access your copy, simply scan this QR code or click the link in the episode description. Okay, so now you know how impactful it can be to tell your story through photos and images. It's time to explore another powerful medium that can help you reach your audience, and that is video. In the next episode, we'll look at how to use Canva to craft captivating stories using video. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.